Host is a horror movie created and directed by Rob Savage, also where the initial idea sprouted. He created a viral video in which he tricked some of his friends into believing his house was haunted. Now, I'm guessing you've already seen the clip, but if not, you can find it online. I'm not going to pop it up here. We are going to talk about the film Host, which came from that after he was approached by Shudder. The concept of the movie takes place around a group of friends which use a seance and try and contact the dead. They do, however, get far more than they bargain for, as they are each haunted by the same ghost. It begins invading their homes, and by the end of the film, it's clear not many are going to make it out alive. One of the things that works so well for this film is how relatable it is in 2020. Obviously, we're all stuck in lockdown and isolation. Many work days for some of us take place entirely on Zoom, which is where this film takes place in its entirety. However, I feel by doing this, and by just having those characters on the screen constantly, it puts a massive weight onto the actresses for them to feel sort of relatable and real. And I can say comfortably, they do a sensational job. I couldn't pick out a weak character. I think everyone really brought their A game for this. And I absolutely believe their friendship, that they were real characters and it was really happening. The only one I would say perhaps didn't really warrant a spot was Teddy. And that wasn't because of how he was portrayed. I think Edward Linard did an incredible job. And when we first met him, he was actually one of my favourite characters. But he's not really necessary for this story. He added a storyline which really didn't go anywhere. And because this film is so short, it sort of eats up time. Although it does make for some very cool scenes later on. But we will get to that. Radina, and I really hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, in particular stood out for me. And I can't quite put my finger on why. I think it was possibly her mannerisms and what she didn't say in a lot of scenes, which made me believe her character fully. Hayley Bishop was fantastic as the lead. Again, believable characters acted very well. I want to see them all in more things now, so I assume I'll be looking through IMDb lists at some point tonight. And especially big shout out to Caroline Ward, who I would say probably had the toughest job, as her character became very worked up and it can be easy to overdo that. But I don't think at any point she broke immersion, she made it feel it wasn't real. I think she hit the nail on the head and went just far enough to make us scared, to make us worried for the characters, but not take us out of the world. Though same praise should go to Emma. She again has such a difficult job in this film. She has to create a very similar role to Caroline, in which she has to hype up her emotions. And again, it's that thing of not going too far, and she absolutely nails it. Just everyone in general, there's so much praise for everyone. There's literally no one in this film I would say had a bad performance. Everyone was on point. For a movie focused entirely on the computer screen and the characters behind it, these performances were so important. Let's talk a little bit about the behind the scenes, the producing, the writing. A lot of time it felt real, and potentially it actually was. According to IMDb, a lot of moments were replayed for the cast, so the reactions were genuine. They were also given freedom to improvise scenes to make the conversation feel authentic. This all pulled together really well and led to the friendships we see on screen. That's not all I've got to praise about this movie though. From the very start and the moment when she's carrying the laptop around with her, framing was a huge thing for me. Rob and his team take full advantage of the mechanic of it being filmed on laptops and phones, very similar to something like Unfriended, but I do actually prefer this movie. When the characters move around the house, you're not seeing what you normally would. You're not seeing these well-framed scenes. It's tricky. How do I explain it? So when they look around a room, they're not looking around the whole room. They'll look around one part of it will be out of view, and your mind races. You're wondering, you're trying to work out what's in that part you can't see. As it slowly pans round, tension builds up. I just can't speak highly enough of how well this movie was shot. I'm not afraid to admit I wore out the edge of my seat watching this movie. Anytime they had the camera and they were in control moving around the house, I knew something was going to happen. The way it was filmed just had me on edge constantly, which is why something like this is such a good horror movie, and why, if you can't tell already, I would recommend watching it. Now, I'm going to give you spoiler warnings as we're going to talk about the most difficult part of a horror movie, the ending. I can't share a movie with praise and not talk about some points I didn't particularly like. After the amount of time we spent with these characters, I felt the ending was very rushed and very predictable. They sped through the kills and didn't really give the characters a send-off they deserve, which after all they did building them up felt a real shame. Personally for me, I would have loved the ending to be they leave the call and they're still being haunted. Now, I know what some of you are saying, how can a horror movie end where there's no real horror, there's no real death? Hear me out. By surviving and taking it back into the real world with them, it adds to the realism of the film, meaning it could potentially happen. The scary part of a movie isn't the character being killed, it's the tension, it's the thought of it actually happening, and this ending just adds to both of those. Although it is a horror movie, I could have got on board with a few of the kills. Then again, I completely see why they chose this ending. They accomplished something incredible during lockdown, telling a story using some really clever mechanics and filming techniques and brilliant acting. It just wrapped it up. Killing the characters off wrapped up the story, it wrapped up this creation, and I completely see why they went for that. It's not going to be the next Nightmare on Elm Street, and at no point do I think this movie aims to do that. I will say I think it's the perfect 2020 horror movie, and I don't know if anything will beat this for me. I absolutely adored it, and I think it hit the nail on the head with everything it tried to achieve. It's a showcase of what a group of extremely talented producers and actresses can do. Even during lockdown, when they weren't able to meet face to face, it just adds to how impressive this was. So if you're not already, I would say head out, sign up to Shudder and get this movie watched. I'm going to say this is not in any way sponsored, I just absolutely adored this movie. I adore Shudder, to be honest, as well, the amount of good horror films they are making. For any horror fan, I would say this is a must. For me, next is possibly Dawn of the Death, which I found through IMDb. Like I said before, I have been looking through. It's produced by Rob Savage again, same writers, even 3 of the same actresses, and I would say 3 are possibly my favourite actresses. That's no slight at all to the other ones. I think everyone in this did an incredible job. Literally everyone on screen did their part. But if you're looking for something very similar after watching this, Dawn of the Death might be a good idea for you guys as well. Basically, it's a title which focuses on a sonic pulse infecting the hearing population, and a small group of deaf people must band together to survive. But that is all we've got for this episode. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end if you're hearing this, sticking around with me, and until the next one.